North Idaho College political scientist, Tony Stewart.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure on behalf of the panel to welcome to forum number 142, Mr. Jerome Eden. Mr. Eden was born and grew up in New York City. He was also educated in that state, receiving his BA degree from New York University and later an MA degree from Columbia University. After graduation, Mr. Eden was and has been he taught school in New York State. In addition to that, he has for some time been a writer, including the field of journalism. He has become very interested, or did many years ago, in the subject UFOs, or unidentified flying objects. And from those studies, he has published 3 books, one of them being Oregon Energy, a second book entitled Planet in Trouble, the UFO Assault on Earth, and a third book entitled Animal Magnetism. Mr. Eden has been on campus today speaking on the subject, the invasion of the Earth by UFOs. And he has consented to be with us this evening to discuss this subject with our panel. Mr. Eden, it's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you for asking me.
I also want to welcome back our panel this evening. To my far left is Mr. Richard Heineman, who's an instructor in the Division of Communications at North Idaho College and is finishing his doctorate at Washington State University in Communications. Also back is Mrs. Mary Lou Reed, who is a very active person in environmental and political affairs in this state and did her graduate work in theology at Columbia University. And to my immediate left is Dr. Ken Wright, the chairman of the Division of Physical Sciences at North Idaho College and a graduate of the University of Idaho. We'll proceed to questions at once, and the first question this evening from Mr. Heineman.
Mr. Eden, in your book, Oregon Energy is defined as the primordial, mass-free, cosmic life energy in which we and everything on our planet are immersed. On January 28, 1971, in response to an inquiry from Senator Frank Church of our state, John S. Coleman, who is executive officer of the National Academy of Sciences, said in this letter to the senator, "To the best of my knowledge, Oregon Energy has never been demonstrated in any way comprehensible or measurable by any physical scientist." My question, Mr. Eden, is would you care to comment on Mr. Coleman's statement to the Senator Church?
Yes, that's a very interesting reaction, but it's not unusual. In my book, Oregon Energy, I list some 51 publications written by Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who discovered the cosmic primordial energy, which he named Oregon Energy, and his associates, of which I list again in the book some 20 scientists, physicians, physicists, mathematician, I believe, a chemist, who corroborated the work of Wilhelm Reich. Mr. Coleman's reaction would be equivalent to, say, the reaction of the Society of Candle Makers at the time that Thomas Edison discovered the light bulb. Candle makers knew nothing about electricity at the time that Edison discovered, or invented rather, the light bulb. And to ask a candle maker what he thought of a vacuum tube with an incandescent piece of bamboo wood inside giving off light, you would get a similar response. You follow me?
Yes.
Since Mr. Coleman and the majority, unfortunately, of classical scientists know nothing about this new knowledge, they are not competent to pass judgment on it. Now,
Dr. Wilhelm made his discovery, or announced his discovery, when about 1954.
Well, the actual discovery began in between 1936 and 1939. And since that time, there have been a number of scientists who have verified the discovery and corroborated. As a matter of fact, there's a journal, scientific journal, that has been published since 1967, which is put out by a group of physicians and scientists who are continuing the work of Wilhelm Reich. So to say that there has never been any corroboration of this by a physical scientist is simply not true.
So you're saying that for some 32 years now, the National Academy of Sciences has deliberately chosen to ignore the work of Dr. Wilhelm Reich.
Well, I don't know if it's deliberate. Let's say it's a lack of curiosity that is not uncommon among people.
Fine, thank you.
Mrs. Reed.
Mr. Eden, would you give us a little bit more of Wilhelm Reich's background and tell us more about orgone energy?
Well,
how did he get going in this, and how is this energy seen and measured?
Dr. Reich discovered what he called primordial, mass-free, pre-atomic energy that exists both in the atmosphere as the cosmic life energy per se, and operates in the human organism as the life energy. Now, philosophers and scientists for thousands of years have postulated the existence of some type of quickening or enlivening influence in our cosmos that is responsible for life, that creates plants, flowers, man, what have you, the creative life force, so to speak. It's been given many names. The French philosopher Bergson called it élan vital. Nikola Tesla, the electrical genius, called it the universal cosmic consciousness. The Greeks had a name for it. The Romans called it vis naturalis. In the 19th century, the physicists postulated the existence of an ether. You may be familiar with that term. Reich proved that there is an enlivening life energy that exists both in the atmosphere and in man. And he proved it over 30 years by Geiger counter, by electroscope, thermically, visually, microscopically. He had electric motors running on this free source of cosmic energy, and he also developed instruments using the cosmic energy by which man could control the weather.
In other words, he felt that this cosmic substance is a material thing which can be measured. It is not just a stream of consciousness or something that's psychic power.
You're
it's
right.
Something that he felt could be measured and utilized.
Yes, you're right. If I may just correct one thing, it is not a metaphysical concept, although metaphysicians have considered this. Mystics have talked about the aura, for example, around the human body, and Reich said, yes, we have an energy field. The Russians are doing tremendous work with Kirlian photography. You may be familiar with that, where they take photographs of the energy field of the hands or of a plant, a leaf. And Reich did this years and years ago, before the Russians. We were 30 years ahead of the Russians. But this orgone energy is not material. It is pre-atomic. In other words, it is energy, not matter.
Thank you.
Dr. Wright.
Mr. Eden, I'd like you to expand a little bit, if you would, on orgone energy. Give us, if you can, briefly, some of the proof that Dr. Wilhelm Reich used to demonstrate the existence of orgone energy. And I'd also like you to explain, since our viewing audience doesn't have the benefit of the lecture that you gave here at the college this morning, explain for them, if you would, the deadly orgone energy, which you called DOR,
yes,
I believe. And you compare and contrast the two, if you would, for our audience.
Well, Reich discovered that orgone energy, this freely available cosmic energy, exists in our atmosphere, that it penetrates everything, unlike nuclear energy, which can be stopped, as you know, or shielded by a piece of paper, a wall, a lead shielding. Orgone energy cannot be stopped. It flows through everything, but at different rates of speed. After years of work and development, he hit upon the idea of building a structure which I describe in my book, Orgone Energy, called an orgone energy accumulator, which will accumulate the energy and make it usable for scientific and medical purposes. Now, what this accumulator is exactly what it says. It's a device which concentrates free energy that's in the atmosphere, has no electrical hookups. You don't plug it in. As soon as you build it and put the 6 sides on it, it is it begins to concentrate energy inside the box. Now, the first time I saw an orgone accumulator, I said, this is crazy. How can you get energy inside a box without doing something? But the proof of this is, for example, I have grown plants inside this accumulator and controlled plants outside the accumulator. The plants inside the accumulator have grown twice the size as the plants outside the accumulator. That's one. I'm giving you my own personal experience. Two, if you place a thermometer inside the orgone energy accumulator and you put control thermometers in the atmosphere at the same height, the temperature inside the accumulator is generally, depending upon the weather, because orgone energy functions depend upon weather phenomena. But generally, the temperature in the accumulator will be higher than the ambient temperature. Now, this is in direct contradiction to classical physics, because according to the laws of classical physics, if we have a hot cup of coffee, it doesn't go from 140 degrees to 142 degrees by itself. It will go from 140 degrees to whatever this room temperature is, 80 degrees or 90. You follow me? In other words, the potential in classical physics is from the higher to the lower, not from the lower to the higher. Orgone energy functions contradict this because they flow from the lower to the higher potential. And that is another proof. Then Reich proved the existence of orgone energy, as I said, microscopically, with a Geiger counter, and in many other ways, electroscopically, and many of the experiments are in one of his basic books called The Cancer Biopathy, which is a basic book if you want to pursue this subject.
Would you expand on the deadly orgone energy
Yes.
and how it's related to orgone energy?
Reich built what he called a cloudbuster, a very simple unit which is described in my book Planet in Trouble, when he realized that UFOs are using the cosmic orgone energy as propulsive power. Now, how did he prove this? He pointed his cloudbuster at what appeared to be a star in the sky and withdrew the energy, the cosmic energy, from the ship and grounded the energy into flowing water. When he did this, this UFO was unable to maneuver and lost its power. How do we know it lost its power? Because the lights began to fade and the ship began to wobble from side to side trying to get away. So what Reich did was actually disable a UFO. He was the first human being and certainly the first credible scientist to ever do this. Now, in connection with the flights of UFOs, I don't think I've made the point. When he withdrew the energy, the ship couldn't maneuver. When he stopped the procedure, the ship was able to maneuver. The conclusion was that the ship runs on orgone energy. Just as if we remove gasoline from a conventional gasoline engine and the engine quits and we put the gasoline back and the engine goes, we know it runs on gasoline. Now, the byproduct of a gasoline engine is carbon monoxide. In like manner, the end product of using orgone energy is what Reich calls DOR, D-O-R, D for deadly orgone energy. DOR is highly radioactive, it lacks oxygen, and it lacks water. So when a DOR cloud, or this exhaust from a UFO, will come over an area, and I've seen it over northern Idaho, I have seen it over New York State, I have seen it in the virgin forests of Alaska, I have seen DOR clouds all over the United States as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to do with smog, although there is a connection between DOR and smog. Wherever there is a UFO, or a UFO has passed, let's say, you can detect the presence of a UFO by DOR. These dark, gray to black, shreddy clouds that look like no clouds you have ever seen before, and if they come over your area, your house or your meadow or wherever you live, they will make you ill. They'll hit each person on his weakest spot. If you have a migraine headache, you'll say, oh, I'm getting my migraine headache again. You'll take a pill for the migraine headache. If you've got ulcers, your ulcers will flare up. If you're irritable, you'll become more irritable. And it'll make everybody thirsty, and you have a feeling of a lack of oxygen. And if you watch the animals, they move very sluggishly, and the sparkle goes out of the atmosphere. It looks like there's death in the atmosphere, because Dor is the principle of death per se.
Is Dor also mass-free?
No. Dor is already matter. Dor is matter. Now, in order to remove the Dor from the atmosphere, Reich invented his cloudbuster. And I have done this myself in northern Idaho. By pointing the cloudbuster at a Dor cloud, you can shrink and dissolve this cloud, and you can clean up the atmosphere. Now, this has tremendous implications for smog problems, for example, because where there is Dor, Dor will attract more Dor, and smog will not dissipate in a Dor atmosphere. So the problem is not only carbon monoxide pollution, but Dor, you see. And I have cleaned up the Dor many times in my area of northern Idaho. And the interesting part about it is I clean it up, and the UFOs pour it back in.
Mr. Heinemann.
Mr. Eden, on page 65 of your book, Orgon Energy, you say that Dr. Reich was a target of a communist conspiracy against him. Now, on March 19th, 1954, an injunction was issued in the United States District Court of Maine at the request of the United States Pure Food and Drug Act, in essence asking Dr. Reich to cease and desist his activities. The injunction was appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court refused to review the case. He defied the injunction and was sent to the federal prison, where he died. Now, my question is, are you contending or inferring that the U.S. District Court of Maine, the United States Supreme Court, the FDA are all part of a communist conspiracy?
No. What I'm contending is that we know that Reich's motor, which he had hooked up to run on Orgon Energy, and his two motors, I believe, and his assistant, a man by the name of William Washington, who was a mathematical assistant who worked with him at the time, disappeared and ended up behind the Iron Curtain. We also know that Reich's Orgon Energy accumulator was reported by a patient to a physician who practices this orgonomy or orgon energy usage, that there were reports that they are using orgon energy accumulators in Soviet hospitals.
Well, now, why are the communists...
Oh, wait. Yes.
Go ahead.
The attack on Dr. Reich was instigated by communists and communist sympathizers. Now, this is documented in a book that was just published called Wilhelm Reich versus the USA by Professor Greenfield, who teaches in New York State. The communists had called Reich a red fascist. It's very interesting. The communists called Reich a black fascist. In other words, he was a radical rightist. And the black fascists called Reich a radical leftist. Because Reich was the only scientist in the world who actually spoke or advocated for life, if you follow me. The first attack on Reich was by a woman by the name of Eddy, who had definite communist sympathizers, I believe. This came out. The second attack on Reich was by Frederick Wortham, who wrote an article called Calling All Couriers that appeared in the New Republic. It was known that during the time that the FDA prosecuted Wilhelm Reich, over 240, I think, or 50 agents of this department were dismissed as security risks. What I get from my study of the case and from studying who actually instigated what is the fact that there was a definite communist interest in Reich's work. The communists ordered all of Reich's books. We know that for a fact. And there were communist communist intentions to steal Reich's work for Russia. This is the way I read it, and destroy the man in this country. And I know it's difficult to believe that this could happen in this country, but if one looks at the literature, even objectively, I think that there is a great deal of room to support this contention.
In one breath, you say the communists were against what Dr. Reich stood for, yet at the same time you say that they wanted to steal and utilize what he's doing. Isn't that a contradiction?
No. Reich wrote and did work in many fields. While they were against his sociological works, they were not against stealing his actual biophysical works, if you follow me. You don't have to agree with a man ideologically in order to steal what he has materially.
Well, then you're saying that they tried to discredit him in this country in order to capitalize upon his invention or his discovery?
They did discredit him, yes. They not only tried, they did a terrific job. They discredited him. Reich, these articles that were planted and published in various national magazines completely discredited Reich. And people would read the articles and they wouldn't bother to even read Reich's work. All you have to do is brand a man a nut or a crackpot, and nobody's a serious scientist will pick it up. Very few people will pick up books after they read articles that the guy is crazy, and that's what they did.
Well, now, did this come out in any of the testimony in the U.S. District Court of Maine?
Oh, yes. A lot of this came out. Well, the books itself, here's the most interesting part about the case.
I read about the communist plot.
Yes, it was put out. It was...
Introduced in testimony?
The judge refused to hear anything that happened before the injunction. I don't want to get involved into the court case because it's very involved, and it would take all our time. As I say, one of the best books on the subject was just published by Professor Jerome Greenfield, and it's called Wilhelm Reich versus the USA. I think it was published by Norton just a few months ago. I don't agree with everything Professor Greenfield says in the book. His facts are correct, but he says that Reich went crazy the last 6 years of his life because of his interest in UFOs.
Mrs. Reed.
Thank you.
Perhaps we should get on to UFOs now. As I understand it, you or Dr. Reich felt that an interplanetary war is taking place. Would you expand upon this theory, please?
Well, if somebody drives an automobile into your home, backs it into your home, and leaves the engine running, whether it's deliberate or whether it's unconscious, makes no difference. You're going to die. And the way I look at the UFO problem, now I'm not saying that all UFOs are hostile. I don't know. But we do know that UFOs are coming into our atmosphere, they're using our life energy, and they're putting out door. Now what is happening is, as they drain our planet of the life energy, they will eventually create another desert wasteland like the moon. Now, if this is a friendly act, it's beyond me.
Do you think that they're fighting each other or that they're after us?
I think they're very concerned about our atomic proliferation. I think they're extremely concerned about a nuclear war because I do believe that whatever we do here with nuclear energy, we are also doing in outer space. We are polluting the atmosphere in outer space, which brings up a very interesting point, and which became a target for espionage as far as Reich's work is concerned, and that was his famous Foreigner experiment. If you will allow me, I'll expand on this. In 1951, Dr. Reich took 1 milligram of radium, pure radium, in its lead container. Now, normally 1 milligram of radium in a lead container, we can place it in the middle of this room and it wouldn't bother anybody. He put this 1 milligram of radium in its lead container into a high concentration of orgone energy, He did this in Rangeley, Maine region, where he had a 280-acre estate, laboratory and estate. The object was to see if orgone energy would have any nullifying or immunizing effect on nuclear energy. The result was that the nuclear energy, when it came into contact with the life energy, and remember, I have said that nuclear energy is deadly energy. It's the opposite of the life energy. When these two antithetical forces came together, the reaction was tremendous. People as much as 90 to 100 yards away from where this experiment was being conducted fell down. They became almost unconscious. Reich almost lost his life. His daughter, Eva Reich, who's a physician, she almost died. He almost lost the life of his son, Peter. All the physicians and scientists who participated in this experiment became deathly sick. Reich was in bed, I believe, for 2 weeks after this, and he thought it was a disaster. But when things calmed down, the counts rose tremendously, incidentally, the Geiger counts on the counter. They noticed clouds were actually, bluish, purplish clouds were forming inside this laboratory where this 1 milligram of radium, which, as I said, normally wouldn't hurt anybody, had been placed in contact with the high orgone energy concentration. But when things calmed down, Reich discovered that this radium was no longer radium. That, I give the figures in my book, I believe, Orgone Energy, where, let's say, I don't remember what they are now, but let's say where the radium gave off before 2,000 counts per minute, it was now giving off something like 120,000 counts per minute. It was a completely different substance, which he called Orur, O-R-U-R. Now, there is evidence to indicate that what our political enemies were after was this experiment.
Well, how about how does this relate to the UFOs? They are concerned.
Well, after this experiment, it was after this experiment in 1951 that people around that area in Rangeley, Maine, began to notice the UFOs coming over. So evidently the UFOs must have also monitored this experiment. You follow me?
Well, they would be concerned about the fact that we were having all this nuclear activity.
Yes, and also there was a tremendous rise in the energy had changed in that area. And since these ships use the main streams of orgone energy, like we drive on a highway, when they came across an area where there was a difference in the energy pattern, they evidently stopped to look. What's going on over here? Another bomb or what? And then after the ships came over to Organon over Rangeley, Maine, then Reich began to notice the door coming over, these deadly black toxic clouds that would come over from the west, which is the general direction that the orgone energy envelope, which surrounds our atmosphere, flows from west to east.
Do you think they're just as concerned about all nuclear activity, which would be nuclear power plants as well as nuclear arms?
Oh, yes. They have been seen over every major nuclear installation on the planet Earth.
Mr. Eden, I'd like to follow this line of questioning that Mrs. Reed is involved in. May I state your position, if I can, to clear up my own mind and then ask you a question, and you please correct me if I'm in error. Is it not true that it is your position that UFOs, as you have described them in your books, are interplanetary travelers, that they are not from this Earth, that they were built or whatever and somewhere else in the universe, and that they are coming to our planet for some reason, to look at us or to invade or to be curious, and that they are coming with the orgone energy as a source of energy to propel them here. And then, while doing this, that they're putting on an exhaust that you call door that's deadly. If that be the case, then my question is, when Dr. Reich and others were involved in this research, why would the UFO travelers be concerned if he tried to get rid of that door, since they'd already used it and it was a wasted material after their flight?
I've stayed awake many a night asking myself the exact same question. Not only why did they seem to oppose him, but they actively opposed him. In other words, here was a man who is engaged in saving this planet, in cleaning up the radioactivity, in changing noxious atmospheres back into a vital atmosphere, and the UFOs came over his area and actually zapped one of his operators who was manning the cloudbuster to clean out the atmosphere. Now, why would they do a thing like that, I said to myself. Doesn't make sense. Unless they don't want us to clean up the atmosphere.
In other words, it would seem if one cleaned up the atmosphere, you were just creating a situation to give them more energy to use in their future flights. But by keeping the door there, and I'm not correct that there is according to your position, a struggle going on all the time between door and Oregon Energy for which will be predominant in our atmosphere.
Well, yes. I give us this analogy. We take a fresh-flowing pond, okay? We've got an inlet and an outlet. And here's a pond. We've got fish in this pond. This is our energy stream, okay? This is our planet. Now, for whatever reason, we dam up the inlet or the outlet. We stop the flow of this, fresh flow of this water. What happens? The organisms living in this pond, the fish, the bacteria, begin to die. They have no fresh energy. The oxygen is being used up. Now, as they die and rot, other organisms take over. All right? The other organisms, let's call them the bad guys, attack the fish and the good organisms, and eventually, whoever wins depends upon whether this is a free, fresh-flowing, healthy atmosphere, you follow me, or a polluted, stagnant atmosphere. Now, the way I see it, and this is conjecture based on some things that have occurred to me, and also Wright mentions some UFOs evidently can only operate in a polluted atmosphere from our point of view, polluted from our point of view. And whose other point of view do we care about? And I pray that there are also good guys who operate in a fresh atmosphere. Now, this might very well be what the Bible talks about as the satanic angels, the fallen angels, the bad guys, who are going to fight with the good guys, and here we go.
That brings up another question we had to pursue at this point, because this has very definite theological implications or revisions, and that is, if I read you right, and Oregon Energy may be what one would describe as God and door the devil, doesn't that give us a totally different interpretation for the theologians to use or to work with?
I don't see where it gives us a different interpretation. I just see where it puts a scientific basis under our ideas concerning God and the devil. Now, if there is a God, and I believe there is a God, we have an opportunity for the first time in man's history to actually learn the laws of God by studying the laws of the life energy, which is an expression of God. If God, according to all major religions, exists everywhere, right, is omnipotent, omniscient, and there's one other that I left out, which are four major attributes of God. I go into it in my book, Oregon Energy. Well, if God is everywhere, Oregon Energy is everywhere. The life energy is everywhere. God is all-present, all-powerful. I believe that the life energy, no matter what happens to our puny planet, eventually will win out. It doesn't really make that much difference to the universe whether Earth survives or not.
I see then you're talking about in that struggle that it's far more encompassing than just our Earth, that between Oregon Energy and whatever throughout the universe.
Yes, I believe that there is an objective reality to door. People say, well, they talk about the devil. Yes, there is a devil. The devil, in my book, is deadly energy. The destructive power, the irrational hatred is based on door. Now, Wright was working on a doorbuster before he died, which is a medical device whereby you can pull door right out of a human being. And when that happens, a bad person, in quotation marks, becomes able to love. Now, isn't that amazing?
Thank you. Dr. Wright.
In your book, Planet in Trouble, Mr. Eden, you refer to cosmic Oregon energy, which I believe you symbolize by as core. Would you tell us whether or not this is indeed the same thing as Oregon energy, and if it's not, what is the difference?
cosmic orgone energy in the atmosphere or the universe is called cosmic orgone energy. When it operates in the living being, as it does in every human being, it's called the life energy or biological energy.
Are they the same thing, though?
Yes. It's only in two states of, it's only in two different states. It's like saying water vapor in the air as H2O, you follow me, as ice, as steam, or as water in the ocean. It's different states of the same energy. But all the energy on this planet, everything that was created, comes from the energy. Once it's in a material form, then we call, in a living form, then we call it the biological life energy. As long as it's in freely flowing in the atmosphere, we call it the cosmic life energy. But it's one and the same energy.
So it's just a difference in state and in terminology.
Yes.
You used the term pre-atomic. Why does orgone energy have to be pre-atomic, and exactly what does pre-atomic mean?
Well, it's pre-atomic in the sense that it is energy before matter. You see, once you have an atom, you have matter. And this is pure energy, before matter. Nuclear energy is energy that's derived secondarily. It's secondary energy. It comes from matter. Orgone energy is the energy which creates matter. It's not an easy concept to follow, but it's about the best I can do.
All right. Now we have here the transformation of orgone energy into deadly orgone energy, which is apparently one of the things that UFOs do, or at least some of them seem to do. And we have orgone energy, which is massless. And you said the deadly orgone energy is not massless. It has mass.
It has mass.
Do you have any proposal for the mechanism of this transformation?
No. How does this come about? I don't know. What you're asking me is, what is the propulsive system of the UFOs? I know they use the energy, but exactly how they use it, Reich, of course, hooked it up to run motors. He told the government, he told the courts, I would willingly give this to the United States of America, but you're not going to force it out of me. And if you put me in prison, or whether you kill me, you'll not get it out of me, but I'll give it to you gladly, openly and freely. But you're not going to coerce me because I'm a free man. And scientific matters cannot be settled in a court of law. These should be settled by scientists sitting down around a table in a friendly exchange of opinion. You don't go and burn my books and 30 years of work, you follow me? He resented it. I would have. So he said, if you're going to put me in jail, then how this energy is hooked up to a motor will die with me. And as far as I know, it did.
Does that mean there are no copies of any of his books?
No, his books are being republished, and I give a list of them in both of my books. They are being republished by a New York City publisher who apparently is willing to go back to court because the injunction still stands. The books were burned on the basis of the injunction, and that injunction is still in effect, and yet these publishers are publishing the material exactly as Reich did as far as they can. So some of these books are available today.
There were copies of his work in extant at the time of the injunction and the so-called book burning.
Yeah, I have a complete library of his work.
Is his experiment in which the orgone energy was hooked up to operate an electric motor then not described in any of this work?
No, it wasn't described. There's an affidavit drawn up by Peter Mills. Incidentally, this is very strange. Peter Mills was Reich's personal attorney and the attorney for the estate and for his laboratory. And he drew up the incorporation papers, and this is in Professor Greenfield's book that I mentioned. Peter Mills suddenly told Dr. Reich he can't work for him anymore, and he became the FDA prosecuting attorney to prosecute Wilhelm Reich. This is very interesting. And Peter Mills was the one who drew up the affidavit attesting to the motive force of orgone energy. But as far as how it worked, he saw the motor running. He wasn't the only one. There were several other witnesses.
That's fine.
Treating in your, going back to your book, Orgone Energy, I have the feeling that throughout you're highly critical of the Atomic Energy Commission, and specifically of the activities of the National Reactor Testing Station down out of Idaho Falls. And then you said, and I quote, "I therefore charge the radioactive polluters of this planet with criminal negligence." Do you contend that the members of the Atomic Energy Commission and people working for the National Reactor Testing Center down Idaho Falls are criminally negligent and should be so charged in court?
Yes.
Do you propose to bring any action, filing charges?
No, at the moment, I don't see myself filing charges. What I hope to do is that I hope that if enough people become aware of what the atomic energy industry is doing and get behind the movement to stop the atomic pollution of this earth, that they will be stopped. Now, if you want documentation as far as what the AEC interests are doing to infants, for example, I would suggest that you read, let me see here. Here's some information. For example, M. King Hubbard, senior research geophysicist for the U.S. Geological Survey of Washington, D.C., stated, quote, 15 years ago I was like everyone else in thinking nuclear power would help meet our energy needs. But I've gradually come around to look at the hazardous aspects, and it scares the hell out of me, unquote. That's Denver Post, October 27, 1974. For years, Dr. Ernest J. Sternglass, professor of radiation physics at the Schools of Medicine and Public Health, University of Pittsburgh, has been studying infant mortality rates around nuclear reactors. His findings are very, very grave and very upsetting. He says, for example, on the Ohio River, infant deaths had risen to their highest peak since 1945, once they began the shipping port reactor. I don't know if you've heard about that. In 1970, there were 44 deaths per 1,000 births, higher than any of the 97 other towns listed in Pennsylvania's vital statistics record. Now, this town, Alkippa, where the statistics were derived, is only 9 miles downwind of the shipping port plant in Pennsylvania. The people of Pennsylvania are up in arms because not only has their infant mortality rate climbed tremendously, but their cancer mortality rate has now jumped 1/3 ever since the shipping port reactor began to spew out its non-polluting gaseous radiation. And these figures are available, and the people are mad, and I'm glad to see they're mad, and I believe that they should be mad, and that nuclear energy use and production, I'm sorry to say, must be stopped all over this globe, not only here.
Well, now this class action that you are contemplating, have you received any encouragement from any of Idaho's political leaders, such as Congressman Sims, Hanson, some of the clergy church? Will they, do you think that any one of them might join with you in this action?
Let me say something here, Dick, if I may. I'm not contemplating a class action. I broke all my spears down in Idaho Falls. I fought a lonely battle, as you see in my book, Orgon Energy. Nobody stood up with me when I got up on my hind legs and screamed, bloody murder. You guys are polluting the Snake River. You're killing people. You're destroying our atmosphere. Nobody. They said, shut up. That's what they told me. People. They threatened my job. They told me to cool it. And when thousands of people work at a place, you understand, when they work in a nuclear site, they have to bring home the bread. They have to work. So their jobs were threatened. So of course I was threatened, and nobody stood up with me.
Well, now, one other point.
But that, excuse me, that happened in what, 1970, I think. No, that was about 1970. I forget. The climate is changing today. People are becoming more aware of the nuclear pollution due to the work of men like Dr. Sternglass and even scientists who work for the AEC who have since been kicked out because they've been squawking about the facts and figures showing the infant mortality death rate rise, like Dr. John Gottman, maybe you've heard of him, or Tamplin. They wrote a book called Poison Power, which is very serious stuff.
Mrs. Reed.
Mr. Eden, could I go off on just a slightly different tangent to follow up on the health aspects? As I understand it, you have a little different viewpoint on what constitutes health and ill health. I'm saying this because I reviewed your book, Animal Magnetism, which is the biography of Dr. Mesmer. And would you agree with him that health is a state of harmony and illness is a state of disharmony in relationship to orgone energy? Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes. The book Animal Magnetism, which was published last year, proves that Franz Anton Mesmer, who lived 200 years ago, used exactly the same energy that Dr. Reich did just a few years ago, and exactly the same thing happened to Dr. Mesmer as happened to Reich. As a matter of fact, Reich got hurt worse because they killed Reich, as far as I'm concerned. But they didn't kill Mesmer, they just broke his heart. Yes, I believe that Mesmer's theory that harmony, the state of harmony, constitutes a state of health is correct in the light of orgone energy. In other words, when the energy is flowing through your body harmoniously and it's not blocked or stopped, as a stream flow is not stopped, then you are healthy. When it's pulsating in all of your organs and tissues and you're not blocked any place, you're healthy. And as soon as that blockage takes place, or there's a conversion in the quality of the energy, and it's converted from a healthy energy to door, then you get sick. Now, whether this comes through radiation poisoning, through food poisoning, through lack of exercise, lack of oxygen in a room, you follow me? It can happen through many, many ways. The worst way, I mean, the most dangerous way, and why I'm so adamant on this point, is nuclear energy, which I consider a deadly opponent to man. It will kill us.
Well, from Dr. Mesmer, we got the word mesmerism, and yes. But as I understand it, you do not feel that this was the healing quality. What is the difference between animal magnetism and its application and just strictly hypnotism?
Well, hypnosis is basically a verbal and suggestive technique. In other words, the hypnotist, and I've hypnotized people, you tell a person, you suggest to the person that he's getting sleepy or she's getting sleepy, and then when they reach a level of sleep, you suggest again what they should do or shouldn't do. Stop biting their nails, stop smoking, etc. You make suggestions, you follow me. In animal magnetism, the physician employs nothing but the energy field of his own hands. And this is what Dr. Mesmer did 200 years ago. It's the same thing Jesus Christ did. We all have this power depending upon our level of energy and our ability to use it, know what we're doing. When a mother strokes the injured knee of a baby, she's using this energy, and she's making it better. When somebody strokes the head of a loved one who's in pain, the same thing happens. We have an energy field, and Mesmer showed that you can give a sick person energy. And also, you can remove door from the body. This is very interesting.
Well, now, in this book, you go on about Jesus Christ as having a very, very intense feeling or a sense
energy field.
Energy field. Now, do you feel that different people have different energy fields, and that
Yes.
some people are more magnetic than others? And
yes,
is it strictly for the purposes of healing, or is it for other purposes?
I don't know.
Well, like a clairvoyant person, would this be someone who had lots and lots of life energy, or do you relate it that way?
No, you don't have to have, I don't see that you have to have a lot of energy to be clairvoyant. You can be, weigh 110 pounds and 85 years old, you know, and you might be clairvoyant. That's another thing.
I see. But to heal, you would have
to heal, you have to have a strong, it seems to me, you would have to have a strong energy field and a certain structure, character structure. You have to be free enough in your body so that this energy can flow. And we have some great healers today, and they are using this energy, whether they know it or not, and whether they admit it or not. But they are using it.
Mr. Eden, we have so much to pursue and time's running short. I would like to get one more question, then I'll go to Dr. Wright. In your book, or one of them, you discuss the shape of saucers or UFOs and all. I think our viewing audience, maybe we should have started out the program with this, but did not. What do they look like? What have you seen and others seen? And also, could you take just a moment to quote at least one person and or two that are well known in our country or in the world that claim they have also seen them?
Well, I personally have seen, I would say, at least 30, maybe 40 UFOs everywhere from New York to the wilderness of Alaska. I've seen many over northern Idaho. I saw more when I used the cloudbuster because apparently they were attracted to them. Not only myself, but other people who were witnessing what I was doing when I broke a drought here with the cloudbuster several years ago. Incidentally, my work is on the record with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So I know it sounds far out, but I can assure you it's not.
Before you quote some of those people, what did they look like, the ones that you saw?
Well, one over Alaska looked like a huge cigar, and one end of it was over one mountain. This was over the Chugach Mountains of Valdez, where my wife and I lived a couple of years. The front of it was over one mountain peak, and the tail end was over another mountain peak, so God knows how long it was. And it was glowing a cherry red, and I and two other witnesses saw it. And then all of a sudden it went out as though you just turned off a light bulb. That was one. One UFO hovered over me and my wife in upstate New York. It must have been about maybe 75, 80 feet in height. It's hard to say. And it shot out. This was around twilight. It was still light enough to see. And it came from the southern sky, just as they describe it, as a falling leaf, and stopped and hovered right over us. And a ray came down, and I got very frightened, and I grabbed my wife by the wrist. We were sitting by a private pool. There was nobody else around, and I was going to dive right into the pool, and the next thing I know, it was gone and left a big vapor trail in the sky, and this vapor came down. It didn't leave a vapor trail, like a large umbrella of a gaseous substance, and it came down, and we got out of there. That was another one. One teardrop-shaped UFO hovered over our homestead in the Valdez, Alaska region. Just sat there in the sky. It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't a seagull. It wasn't a hot air inversion. It wasn't a St. Elmo's fire. It was an object, and it sat there hovering, and there were winds, so if it was a balloon, it would have blown away, and it hovered there for about an hour and took off. Don't ask me why. I don't know. Maybe they know I'm here. We have seen many over the northern Idaho area, and anybody who wants to see a UFO simply goes outside at night, as I have done for hundreds and hundreds of hours, get a chair, relax, lie back if you can, and observe the sky and watch what happens. And almost any night, they seem to prefer a Wednesday. I don't know if they have some kind of a conclave going on Wednesdays or what, but they seem to prefer a Wednesday night between, I would say, the hours of anywhere from 6 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning. And if you observe long enough, eventually you will see UFOs. 15 million people have seen UFOs in the United States.
We'd like to see this study. We are running short of time. I want to get back to Dr. Wright, but could we get one quote from you?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't discuss anymore whether UFOs exist. They exist, and here are some quotes which back it up. Dr. Hermann Oberth, who is the father of German rocketry, said, quote, "There is no doubt in my mind that these objects are interplanetary craft of some sort. I and my colleagues are confident that they do not originate in our solar system," unquote. Here's another one. "Of course the flying saucers are real, and they are interplanetary." That comes from the Air Chief Marshal, Lord Dowding, who was the head of the Royal Air Force during World War II. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Quote, "I've been convinced for a long time that the flying saucers are interplanetary. We are being watched by beings from outer space," unquote, Albert M. Chopp, Deputy Public Relations Director of NASA. Rear Admiral Delmar Farney, U.S. Naval Reserve, made this statement, quote, "Unidentified flying objects are entering our atmosphere at very high speeds and obviously under intelligent control. We must solve this riddle without delay," unquote.
Thank you. Dr. Wright.
Earlier in this interview, Mr. Eden, you stated that Oregon Energy has been harnessed to run things such as electric motors. You talked about the Oregon Energy accumulator, and I think you stated that it's fairly easy to build an accumulator and to demonstrate the utility of Oregon Energy. My question is, why have you personally not demonstrated or developed Oregon Energy for your own use and thereby demonstrate its utility to the rest of the world and the scientific community? We are certainly in an energy crisis and could use another source of energy.
Well, I have done exactly that. I have broken 2 droughts in northern Idaho and gotten absolutely no place with the governor of Idaho and anybody else, the farmers, the ranchers who cry when there's no rain, and then when you tell them, well, let's back this research and do some more research and get proper equipment. I can't do it alone. I'm one man, and it's very dangerous, incidentally. You just don't point pipes at the sky. You draw in very high charges of energy, similar to a lightning rod will draw in electrical energy. I have used an Oregon Energy accumulator for my own personal use. I put it in my book for almost 20 years or more, which has kept me out of the doctor's office for a long time. I have healed burns and wounds and all kinds of injuries with this. I put it out in my book. I have begged, screamed, cried, and prayed to people in government, from the president's office on down. You tell me what else I can do, I'd be very happy to do it. How can I get them interested?
The examples you've given us so far are health-related or weather-related. I'm thinking in terms of kinetic energy, converting Oregon Energy to a useful form of kinetic energy, some kind of motive power, like electric motors.
Well, hook it up. I don't know how to hook it up. I'm not an electronics engineer. However, people are beginning to work in this field.
I wish I could let you go on, but the master clock has caught us again, as it always does. We're out of time. Mr. Jerome Eden, it's been a pleasure having you on our program and discussing a very controversial and exciting topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for inviting me.
I also thank the panel for, again, outstanding questions and pursuing them to the point that you did. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been Mr. Jerome Eden, formerly of New York City, who now lives in Carywood, Idaho, and is spending most of his time in researching the subject and writing about it, UFOs, and he's been our guest today. May I take this opportunity to invite you to be with us again next week, and we'll be interviewing another personality of the Northwest or United States. Also, if you would like to discuss with us any particular subject that you would like covered on this program or guest, I invite you to contact me, Tony Stewart, at North Idaho College, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we will consider your request. Thank you for being with us, and good evening.